I like to get into my pajamas and curl up on the sofa under a blanket. It doesn't have to be silent, but it has to be calm.
As a reader, obviously, I think we all go through stages where it's really difficult to concentrate. Particularly, we've all experienced lockdown, and so any sort of trauma or time that we get, anxious or nervous. When I've been through, recently, I've been grieving for a loss, so those difficult times are particularly hard to concentrate. I think that's reflected in children as well. And children go through so many difficult times, ups and downs in their lives, where, there will be times where it's particularly hard for them to concentrate and focus when it's time for reading.
I think that's a really good point. I think there's also everyday experiences and times which are more tricky. I know myself, if I'm on a busy train or on a tube, I find it really difficult to engage deeply in a novel. Mm-hmm. But I can read kind of lower stakes text, I guess, like Twitter or scrolling through my phone. I find that easier.
Absolutely.
I can concentrate and engage in those spaces, but I do find it difficult. It's noisy, there's lots of a busy environment to deeply engage in the text.
And that's still reading, but obviously if you want to try and spend more time trying to get really invested into a book, it's difficult. I come from a large household, so with 5 children, it is very difficult to find that time to sit and concentrate, and it's difficult for the siblings as well, to try and find time. But it's about creating that space, isn't it? And finding pockets of space or time during the day to be able to concentrate.
And I guess that's similar in the classroom, isn't it? There's 30 children often, sometimes more, and trying to find those pockets of time where there is calm and quiet for children to engage, while also balancing the social aspect of reading as well. Mm-hmm. So children having time to chat about books and to share books together. But it's challenging, isn't it, to find that space in the busy day.
You need like a good 20 minutes to be able to really get into the story, get back into the story when it's a fiction book. Whereas with the non-fiction, you're able to, just pick a page and you get something. Yeah, and that's important as the rights of the reader as well. To be allow ourselves to dip in and out, and equally with the children to allow them to dip in and out of books. That's why, spaces within school are so important, to find reading spaces within school. So if you haven't got a library, what's really important is to make sure the book corners are enticing, to make sure that there's seating areas, that, there's time given to be actually, to be able to sit in the library, in the book corners to read.
You definitely see that with children in the classroom, sometimes perhaps chatting to their friends or not engaging in the text because perhaps they're finding it difficult to concentrate, or perhaps staring into space, looking kind of that they're not engaging with the text in front of them.
And then obviously support staff are, really, really important in this, in that they are able to take the children away to the library for some short time away from the busyness of the classroom, or, in, whether it's intervention rooms or what have you, and, just to be able to spend time getting really deeply invested into a book, and to actually be able to concentrate for some children in a large classroom, that's not going to work for them.
I think that's a really good point. There's the physical space, isn't there? And there's also the environment in terms of the noise level, the busyness of it. There's two things to think about when providing that time for children to engage deeply in text.
Role modeling's really, really important. So in terms of reading aloud, once we have that sort of sacred reading aloud time in every classroom, then the children know what it feels like to actually get lost in a book. And I think for a lot of children, they don't ever get that time where they can allow themselves to get lost in a book. Once you've experienced it, then, it's sort of like that magic, you feel that magic. But unless it's been role modelled to them first, they're often not going to get that. Yeah, so it's really important to ensure that, they've seen and felt that, for them to want to then go on and do that on their own, to spend that time.
And if children do find reading tricky, having that read aloud time does enable them to, as you say, get lost in the book, feel that experience, even if they do find the act of reading quite difficult. They've got that time and space because they're being read aloud to from great texts. I think it's even more important for those children they get a similar experience, the best we can kind of replicate that in school. So the importance of those shared read aloud times with the whole class listen to a high quality text read by the teacher, I think that provides a different space, but another space for children to engage deeply with text. So having that space is really important, but it's also a bonding experience for the class. It helps build those communities we've spoken about because everybody's listening to the same text. They've got that book in common. Everyone's enjoying that experience together, and finding that space and time for that daily is really, really important.
And that helps to build the reading community, and the children will then have that shared book that they can use to begin conversations around reading. Whether the child liked the book or not, it'll help them to find books that they will then later be able to engage in. It's about engaging with parents and finding out how our children are coping at home, and do they have that space. And often parents might not be able to give the time. With working families, it's very difficult. But just to find that pocket of space, whether it's while a parent's cooking and the child's reading to them, like I say, on the commute to and from school, and also libraries, is to encourage parents to tap into the library spaces and point out where the libraries are, because quite often parents don't know where their local library is. Showing them that that this is a great space, it's a free space as well, where you can take your children along to, and they've got that time to be able to engage with books and read.
I think that's public libraries can play such a great role in homes where they are really busy and there's lots of people around. It can be chaotic at times. Having that space that's dedicated to reading, both the library in school and the public libraries and the reading corners in the classroom, they really the space is for reading, so children perhaps feel more likely to engage in text in a deep way in those spaces.
Absolutely, and that's the way we'll encourage them to be lifelong readers as well, because they'll have felt that, and then they'll have learned where it is that they can feel comfortable reading. I think one of the key things to remember as well is that safe spaces and reading spaces look different for everyone. So within our community, we have a lot of children that live in tower blocks, and where do they find that space? Well, one of our children, she actually came to me and she says that she loves reading, and the reason that she had started to love reading was one of our older children had spent time with her reading in the communal gardens, and every day throughout the summer they would sit together, and building a community of readers is really important. So seeing children with their older friends, sitting with them, reading them and encouraging them to love reading. So it's not always about the adults within the family, it's the adults around them or the older children around them, their peers, who can help support that love of reading. And as I say, that that doesn't always necessarily have to be within the home. And we are very fortunate to have a really good community here, and within the green spaces lots of events go on where books are readily available to be shared with the children.
So for some children who don't have those cosy bedtime reading experiences at home,
I think what's really important is actually having a conversation with the child whenever you see that they're struggling to read. What is it that's making them not able to focus? And that could be just the classroom environment, could be that it's too noisy. A lot of our children wear ear defenders, and that might be something that they need just to cancel out the noise that's around them. But also it might be the seating, it might be the fact that they just aren't comfortable where they are, and we've had children where they want to take their shoes off just to be able to relax a bit. But the important thing is to have those conversations. When I do see a child bring a book back to the library and, I'm quite sure that they haven't read it, or if I'll ask a question, they say, oh no, I just didn't like it. I'll ask them, what was the issue with the book, and if they say they didn't like it, then we help them to find something else. But often, when you come from a big family, or if you come from a place where there's emotional difficulties behind reading, because as I say, if there's a trauma that you've had, if there's difficulties at home, then you're not able to concentrate. It's worth exploring that with the child. So we do have these conversations, and then we think about how we can support them with finding a space for reading. What I tend to do a lot as well is by giving advice by what my children would be doing. So I know that with my children and with my older children, they don't always find a quiet space until bedtime, and at bedtime they might be too tired to read, so they might read on the commute to school. With my younger daughter, she likes to come read to me while I'm cooking. So it's about finding a space and helping children to find pockets of space within their timetable at home, or within the space that they have at home.
I think, that similar conversation, knowing our children as readers at home, but also in school. So where do they what kind of environment do they want to read in? Do they want a kind of buzzy environment where people are chatting, or do they want a more quiet space? And that might change, I guess, day to day or moment to moment. It depends on the needs of the children, what they're thinking about. And I guess it's about finding that balance in the classroom, space for children to chat and talk about books, and space for children, if they want to read quietly and independently, and how we can create spaces. So perhaps children going to read outside on a sunny day, perhaps having it, one part of the classroom where children are chatting, the other part where children are choosing to read independently, and creating that time and space for children to engage in either or both of those things. It's about knowing our children as readers and knowing what they need in that particular moment or that particular day. I think knowing what kind of text they want to engage with, what kind of environment they want to engage with, whether that's a chatty social one or a more independent one, and really finding that time and space for children to engage both in those types of texts and in those types of environment where they feel like they can engage meaningfully in text. And I think those experiences or those preferences might change day to day or within days, and it's about really knowing our children's readers, having that conversation and finding that space for them to do that.
Yeah, and it's ensuring that those conversations take place in school between adults, between children. And, you know, what I find what's really lucky about having the library is that those conversations take place naturally in the library and in those reading corners. And, you know, if we provide that for them, then, you know, it makes it easier on us as well to be able to support them with their reading choices.
I completely agree, and I think it's really important that we as adults and reading teachers and reading librarians engage in those conversations, tune in and listen so we really know our children's readers and what they want from their reading experience in school.